Hey. Hey, stranger.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Molly, if you can help me with roll call, please.
Sure thing. Alderperson Henry. Here. Alderperson Schaefer. Alderperson Valdy.
Here.
Alderperson Wilkin.
Here.
Alderperson Grimmer.
Here.
Alderperson Price.
Here.
Alderperson Eicher.
Here.
Mayor Atwell.
Present.
Administrator Hafner.
Here.
Attorney Sawyer Gutenkunst.
Present.
Great, thank you very much. Move on to item number 4, approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of June 19th.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Just to
Okay.
confirm that was Schaefer on the second.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, City of Delafield citizens' comments. Is there anyone that, Mary, come on up.
Yep, you hit that button right there. There you go. There.
Thank you. My name is Mary Daniel. I live here in Delafield at 309 Wisconsin Avenue. This evening, I'd like to talk about an item on the agenda, Plan Commission 2 and E, Oakwood Drive, Hendricks Properties, applicant George Irwin III, approval of the River Walk easement for St. John's Estates. I hope all the Common Council people have walked this area, now referred to as River Walk easement. The River Walk easement is on pages 212 to 219, sort of, in the 315 pages in the packet. The first time the Riverwalk easement, a draft, appeared on the city website was for the Plan Commission meeting on June 28th. Exhibit A and B, which were maps, were missing, and I noted that in citizens' comments. It was not on the agenda for the Public Works meeting July 10th, but is mentioned in the meeting minutes. The packet for this evening's meeting, the Riverwalk easement, has much more detail. So, Delafield has another riverbank easement along the Bark River. In 2018, the grantor was Roger Salick, the Salick's Karate Studio. The copy and the map are very detailed. Looks like this. And the current one for this easement looks like this. So it takes a little bit more to try to figure it out, I think. I want to believe that all the bases are being covered with our riverbank easement. And I always rely on the city's website for the agendas, meeting minutes, and documents, because they're all filed there. My question this evening is, should the Riverwalk easement be reviewed again in the new format? The Bark River, its shorelines, wetlands, and floodplains must be protected. The steep hills above send the water down the hills to nurture the ground below, and we need to leave a smallest possible footprint. I know we can do that with prudent, long-range plans for maintaining this river. So my request to you this evening is take a moment and listen to the river. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to be next? Who'd like to be next? Come on up. Remember me?
Hey, Wayne.
Hi, everybody. Wayne Dean, I have to say it differently now. 8206 Spinnaker Bay Drive, Windsor, Colorado. I just want to take the opportunity to say goodbye and to thank everybody. I didn't have the chance when I left, and Dirk took my place. Congratulations. Much easier shoes to fill for you than I had replacing Chris Smith. But I just want to take the opportunity to thank the citizens for allowing me the opportunity to serve. It was a lot of fun. It was something I felt was necessary to pay back to the citizens, and I think more people should. And I was trying to think what I can do to say that wouldn't be controversial, but the only thing I can say is I wish more people would get involved in city politics. Yes, it can be challenges, all of you know. Yes, it can be time-consuming, but you get as much out of it as you put into it. So I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to everybody before, but appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you,
comments.
Wayne.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on up.
Evening, everybody. My name is Edward Kranick, N34W29637 North Shore Drive, Pewaukee. I'm the duly elected town chair in the town of Delafield, and I'd like to speak to you this evening about the three
Can you
proposed amendments.
please slow down and repeat your address?
N34W29637 North Shore Drive in the town of Delafield.
Thank you.
And I'd like to speak to you this evening about the three proposed amendments in front of you regarding the Lake Country Fire and Rescue. Obviously, there have been some challenges, some disagreements, some adversity amongst the different communities. I'm here to speak on behalf of the town and as myself. I just walked through and saw Mr. Hafner's memo, and I just want to address version 1 regarding the refactored formula and the comment that the town can't accept that. No, the town cannot accept version 1 because the way that we went to our referendum was based on the agreed to formula that is in the current IMA that was adopted by this body and all the other municipalities and signed to in the fall of 2020. So we would have a difficult time agreeing to that. I think there are two issues regarding the fire department right now. Is we have a short-term issue that we need to address to amend the IMA to create that exception for the CPI plus 2%. I believe version 2 does that for 24, and I would highly support and recommend that this body adopt that so that we can at least move forward and retain the 7 firefighters that the city's fire fee went for. Yes, the town went for the 14, and I'd like to really see the fire department get staffed so that we can, make sure that we're improving our response times as we told our citizens we were going to do when we went to our referendum in April. I also want to ensure and make sure that the station down the street in the city of Delafield is being open and not being shut down for 10 to 15, 24-hour periods in a given month, because that station, while I reside in the town and represent the town, is critical for the response of my constituents in the town that live off of Cushing Park and up Highway C. So I just hope that we can all try to put our egos aside and get the short-term solution passed, and we need to obviously work together to get a long-term solution. Obviously, I've been watching your meetings. I've heard you loud and clear. You don't think it's equitable. You want leverage, and we need to obviously keep working and keep talking to make that happen. But I think at the end of the day, we have a really good thing with Lake Country Fire and Rescue. We need to not forget that. We knew that when we added 4 more communities that it wasn't going to be easy, that there were going to be some growing pains. And I think this is just one of the growing pains that we need to just all kind of have some ground rules and check our egos at the door and try to work through them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Is there anybody else? Anybody else for citizens' comments? Seeing none, citizens' comments are now closed. Okay, we'll move on to number 6, matters of possible closed session. The council will reconvene in open session after completion of the closed session to consider the balance of the agenda. 6A, motion to convene into closed session pursuant to the following provisions. Motion to convene into closed session pursuant to the provisions of Wisconsin Statute 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. More specifically, the contested case hearing regarding Wisconsin DNR grant of pier permit under Wisconsin Statute 30.12 to place a pier on Nagawicca Lake in the city of Delafield. 6A2, motion to convene into closed session pursuant to the provisions of Wisconsin Statute 9.1851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. More specifically, consideration of approving an application for prior police service credit as allowed for in Section 21.04 of the City of Delafield's Police Union contract.
I'll make a motion to move into closed section.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Alderperson Henry.
Aye.
Alderperson Schaefer.
Aye.
Alderperson Valdy.
Aye.
Alderperson Wilkins.
Aye.
Alderperson Grimmer.
Aye.
Alderperson Price.
Aye.
Alderperson Eicher.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carried. All right, so basically we ask everybody to leave while we're in closed session. And then we will, when we're done with the closed session, we'll reopen. We'll close the door and put a sign up on the window. And when that sign's removed and the door opens, you can come on back in. All right, we are returning from closed session, and we'll do a roll call, correct, to go into open session?
I'll make a motion to return to open session.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. No.
Roll call. Henry?
Oh,
Aye.
I'm,
Schaefer?
Aye.
Valding?
Aye.
Wilkins?
Aye.
Grummer?
Aye.
Price?
Aye.
Iker?
Aye.
okay, thank you very much. Motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to 6C, discussion and possible action regarding items discussed in closed session.
I'll make a motion to cooperate with the DNR and support them in the contested case hearing up to legal costs of $5,000, not to exceed $5,000.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, I am going to move in reference to item 6A.2, a move to approve, per Chief Nyron's recommendation, the approval of an application for prior police service credit as allowed for in Section 21.04 of the City of Delafield Police Union Contract.
Second.
All right, is
Second?
there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. All right, we will move on to number 7, consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Number 8, board, committees, and commission reports. A, licenses? Anything, Molly? No? Okay, B, planning commission. Mr.
Okay,
Iker.
we have a few items, mostly concerning the St. John's Estate development. And this did not happen overnight, so if anyone has any questions, we're not going to go fast, just ask them, please. But all the items that are in front of us have been discussed in the recent Plan Commission meeting as of last month, and were all approved, I believe, unanimously. So that gives you some background as far as the support of this and how things have been handled. And there are some city planner notes along with other city staff reports associated with each of them. So if you've read them and have questions about those, please ask as well. But the first item on the list is for the certified survey map for, and this is item 8B2A. And that's to divide 2 lots formerly known as St. John's Golf Course. And the Plan Commission, like I said, recommended this unanimously. And let's see. There are no notes on contingency, so I'll make a motion to approve the certified survey map as presented and recommended by the Plan Commission.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing
Yeah.
none?
Actually, Tim, in an email that Amy Barrows sent to me, today's city planner, she suggested that all St. John's motions should be subject to city staff review.
I think that is fine. It wasn't in the minutes. I mean, it wasn't in the packet. So I will amend my motion to include approval of the CSM as presented contingent upon final city staff approval.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, now, item 8B2B is the specific implementation plan for the same development. And this, again, was approved by the Plan Commission unanimously. And in the packet, there are notes, including, let's see here. I'm moving too fast, so I said slow down and I'm moving fast. So I will make a motion to approve this with the recommendations included in the city planner's letter contingent upon final staff approval.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
And this is for now retroactively talking about what we just approved. We did go through rather detailed about the subdivision covenants and that, and so there was some nice hearty discussion about that, and lighting and monument signs and everything, so.
I just want to, oh, go ahead, make the motion, and then I'll discuss.
Oh, that was retroactively talking about the last one we
Okay.
passed. So,
I just want to compliment you on bringing up the lighting issue. That was very insightful.
Oh, and I'm going to piggyback on that too, because I actually made a note to thank you for having those lights going off at 10 p.m. That is really, yeah, that made me very happy. Not that it matters what I think, but
I asked, we'll credit the developer and his understanding of the situation with agreeing to it. So then, item 8B2C, what would a development be without a stormwater management maintenance agreement? I'll make a motion to approve the stormwater maintenance agreement, and there are a lot of engineering notes. So this approval would be contingent upon satisfaction of city staff to meeting all those contingencies.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, item 8B.
have a second?
Mark.
Item 8B2D, this is the general public access easement for the different trails contained within the subdivision. And there's a separate one that then refines it specific to the Riverwalk easement, which is the next topic. So this one is in the packet, and it deals with the integrated trail system that connects to other public trails and to Cushing Park and to Oakwood and to the other streets nearby. So I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Plan Commission to approve the public access easement contingent upon staff approval and of final details.
I'll second, and this, just to confirm, there is no designation of a public path on the west side of the development. That's at the determination of the HOA, correct?
That is specifically called out as not being in there, being omitted from the initial plans.
Right.
So.
And then the extension to Hillcrest,
That is.
That
in
is,
there.
that is part of it. That
correct.
is just a,
And at least my review, and I apologize, I had to deal with some issues at home the last month, but there are very few trees that are being removed, if any, correct?
that's,
That Pat? No, on the extension to Hillcrest, not on the golf course.
Yeah, they said that they would work around them.
Correct, and retaining that sign of one of my constituents, yes. Okay,
Yes, they believe they could do that.
great, thank you.
and on the tree front, is it okay to ask the question now?
anytime.
Okay. On page 53, I was looking through some of the details right under lighting. It said no changes since the GDP plan approval. The applicant will mitigate for tree loss on site, and no in lieu mitigation fees will be required. My only question is, in what way is the idea of a mitigation for tree loss?
The plant replacement
They're
trees
replanted.
to equal the caliper inches that were removed.
Thank you.
And I would further add that, according to a previous testimony by the applicant, they are agreeable to neighbors paying for and supplementing additional tree plantings approved by the developer.
It's a good tree plan.
Is that in there? Is that in anything we're approving tonight? As far as holding the developer responsible for dealing with neighbors? I mean.
No, my understanding is that's a side deal. That's
Okay.
not something that's in the
Yep,
packet.
that's just my public comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we're not approving that
No.
as being something
No.
binding, okay.
No. We have a second, yeah?
I'm sorry, do we have a
thought-
second?
I thought I had Iker and Grimmer.
Grimmer, okay.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Okay, and on to 8B2E. This is the Riverwalk easement agreement. And so, formalizing a name, well, anyway, I'll make a motion first. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Plan Commission, and that is to approve the Riverwalk easement agreement with the developer for St. John's Estates.
Second.
And as a discussion standpoint, assigning a formal name to the designated area does seem like we're taking a very formal step to formally change the looks and nature of this existing trail. That is not the designation of the actual space. If you look at there's a what do you call it, display B, or there's a drawing in here that shows an actual surveyor map that defines inch by inch the entire 15-width swath. There's
Page 223.
page 223. So it's explicitly laid out exactly where this easement goes through the property, and it's not as easy to necessarily read as a nice graphic map, but it does. It's an actual surveyor map that shows, like I said, inch by inch. And it's not a formal timeline for the city to put down paving, put down wood chips, alter in any way what's there in its existing state. So this is merely the dedication of the city's right to do improvements as short or long term as it sees fit and is able to do with recommendations from Park and Rec or other volunteer organizations or whatever. But I don't believe there's a plan for financial investment from the city to do anything. That's something that would come up in budgets moving forward. But status quo is really what's happening in the short term. And there's even designations, if you look at the Public Works comments, about any kind of ambiguity or whether or not there's disabled access to the trail should be removed, because there's not. It is really a game trail, for lack of a better term, right now, where you can go explore like you're the second or third person there, even though you'll see evidence people have been there for a while. But I just want to bring that up, that there's not going to be a thrasher going through there removing a bunch of wildlife, and that this is going to be something that needs to be thought out and planned. So.
And just following off of Alderman Eicher's comments, this should also be subject to city staff review like the other items. And if you look at item number 4 in the document, it talks about the city's maintenance responsibilities. And it really talks about a higher level of maintenance responsibilities than what we envision, and we intend to tweak this. It talks about snow and ice removal. It talks about removal of all obstructions, when this is really intended to be an as-is kind of hiking trail where you would expect roots and rocks to be protruding out of the dirt and things like that. So I think it needs to be amended slightly as far as the level of effort contemplated for maintenance.
I will amend my motion to include, which I should have, to include a contingency of approval of the Riverwalk easement upon final staff approval.
I will second.
So this is more or less a approval of, or request for the easement. It's not approving construction of anything. It's
Actually,
legal
it's our
easement to that.
acceptance of the right to access property, which is private, and it's a 15-foot wide swath that's going through private property that the developer is granting to the city with some responsibility. It's access. We're not getting the land, but it's with our responsibility to work with them and work on our own to maintain it. So right now it's kind of a rogue, hey, you're trespassing, but use it anyway kind of an arrangement. They're making it official that this is going to be City of Delafield public access, and when we want to improve it, we will. And there's even contingencies in there for a couple different access points if we wanted to make an improvement on our own dime and apply for the certified survey map update to access the Bark River from the property to get your toes wet or whatever, because the path doesn't connect to the river except for 2 places where in the future, if we decide that we want to do it, we can apply for that easement and we'll get it. So.
It's actually an easement that the city and the Park and Rec Commission had been trying for many years when St. John's still owned the property to obtain, and so now we're finally obtaining it.
This has been a process in the works for at least 5, 6, maybe 7 years, right? And this is the fruits of that labor.
Kudos to the developer for giving that consideration.
George is here. He's going to yell and stand up if we do anything wrong. So, so you reserve the right. Please come up and, yeah, please come up and say. Press the button so you're.
George Irwin. The characterization of the easement is very accurate. It's what you're going to do with in the future, and there are certainly many opportunities to do good things. Many years ago, I granted almost a mile of access on the Economock River to the city of Economock, and they applied for one of the river grant programs under the DNR. So there may be grant programs that you could utilize in order to improve it rather than spending money that's available from the DNR. So those are all things that staff can work on going forward.
Thank you for the comment. You can stay there up there if you like.
All right. Well, no, then I might have
One more.
You just run the risk of getting questions. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Yeah, and I would say it was very, like I said, a long, thorough process. Nothing was hurried, and we had great cooperation with combining different citizen input and community input into, and the cooperation of George and his team and Hendricks to help make this work out. So we're looking forward to a quality development close to downtown. Next item for the Plan Commission is a ordinance text amendment, ordinance number 817. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, developers agreement. I'm sorry. Let's make a developers agreement for St. John's Estates.
Happens to us all.
Section item 8B2F. Plan Commission approved a recommendation to the council for a developers agreement with the attached exhibits. So I will make a motion to approve the developers agreement pending and contingent upon staff final approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes.
And I think you're done, George. Thanks.
I just want to say thank you for all of your efforts, because it's been a 4-month process, and everything was just in time. I had to read a lot of stuff, and it was much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And all these agreements will hold you to it, just so you know. Okay, next item, 8B2G. So over the course of time, maybe you heard the mayor mention the year of the lists. Inevitably, and even with all the effort we're putting into it, there's sometimes ambiguity or conflict between different sections of our code, or what is common practice and what the building inspector is being asked to approve versus what he's allowed to approve, what should go to Plan Commission, what shouldn't. And so there's been an ongoing effort to really dive into the details of these types of conflicts. And Scott and Amy, the staff, have worked really diligently to pull some of these things together. And typically it comes up when there is a actual agenda item where there's this ambiguity and it's causing some sort of strain on what's the right thing to do. So Scott and Amy have done a good job of pulling a couple of these things together, and what we have in front of us today is ordinance number 817. It's an update that deals primarily, I think this is with Phil, right? And grading. Yes. So this has to do with what, when, and how somebody who's wishing to move a certain amount of material around on their property, change grading at more extreme slopes. So some of the gist of the changes here are the ability of the building inspector to grant grading permits for certain minor grading situations, and defer and demand city engineer get involved when he thinks there's certain issues that should be of concern or that are of concern, and then when would require Plan Commission approval versus just simply saying, this looks good, checked with the city engineer, you can move your 2 truckfuls of dirt. So it makes things easier for some people to do reasonable projects and more difficult and tedious for people that are trying to circumvent the rules and do more extreme things over the course of time, if that makes sense. If you read it, it jumps out at you as far as the text amendments. So I'll make a motion to approve the updated text amendments as approved and recommended by the Plan Commission to ordinance number 817.
Second?
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
I think I'm done with Plan Commission. So next meeting's at the last Wednesday of this month.
Sounds good. Nice job, Stryker. Okay, see Lake Welfare Committee, Mr. Price.
Yeah, Lake Welfare met last Wednesday. If you just want to look at the minutes, there are a couple of minor things that were approved. We did get 125 Ds at the roundup, which I think was pretty exciting. But the most exciting thing is we got the award of the contract for the Lake Nankawicka dredging project at the Park River. We went through all the bids with SEH, and we'd like to make a motion to accept the bid from Michael's Construction in the amount of $392,385.93, as recommended by the city engineer and unanimously recommended by the Lake Welfare Committee at their meeting on July 12th.
Second?
Second, okay.
And then this is,
Wait, who had the second?
I had the second. This is,
Grimmer.
this was budgeted for how much? 500,000?
505?
505.
505.
We're under
and
budget.
We're under budget.
Yeah,
budget.
No.
so I have a question about that then. The discussion is, if it did come in under budget, was there any discussion about taking more? I mean, that was,
Let's
Let's
back
clarify.
up.
okay.
It's a very minor
So
amount, but
we had a base bid for dredging of 5,000 cubic yards, and then we had an alternate bid for dredging 3,000 more cubic yards for a total of 8. And with our budget, we could only do 1,000 of the 3,000 in the alternate bid. And this puts us pretty much on budget with a $30,000 contingency. So if there's not other changes that come up along the way, we might be able to add an additional $30,000 of dredging to the project. We're planning on 6,000 cubic yards.
Is the motion that, is the budget item, the capital expenditure that was passed, is it is it a dredged amount that was passed, or is it an area that was passed? Or
It was a
was it
dollar
just a
amount.
dollar amount that was
It
passed?
was two different,
So dredge as much as you can up until the budgeted amount.
exactly.
correct. And if you look at page 261 of the packet, it shows how we get from the contractor's contract of $390-some thousand up to $502,000 of project costs by adding about $50,000 in engineering. There's going to be an access easement that we need to come to terms on with a property owner to get the trucks in and out, and that property owner is asking for $30,000 in payments. So that agreement will be coming to the council next month. And then there is that contingency that I mentioned of $30,000.
So the dredged amount that we're getting, is this what we expected for the price that we're paying?
More
Or
or
is this-
less.
Was it more or less?
Well, there's a lot of moving balls, right?
We
So
expected 5,000 cubic yards and hoped for 8,000, and we're getting 6.
Okay, so that's
Maybe
more.
So it's not that far under budget when you look at that page.
it's not under budget.
261, it's right on the money.
Yeah,
It-
it's not
it-
under budget.
No, it's not, it's great, though.
It's right there.
I think it's a great, yeah.
We use every nickel.
Like somebody read the budget. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, plus the,
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to D, Park and Rec Commission and Tree Board. Mr. Schaefer.
Park and Rec We're working on our revising the 5-year parks plan, which the current plan expires in '24, so time to update that.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to E, Public Works Committee, Mr. Grimmer.
I was unable to attend. I'll refer you to the minutes.
Okay, Tom, anything to add, or are we good to go?
No, it's primarily the review of the St. John's Estate subdivision, engineering involved with that.
Sounds good. All right, F, Delahart Commission, Mr. Iker.
Yeah, Delhart, we have a meeting tomorrow night. And over the past 2 months, we've been vetting potential candidates for a replacement of our general manager, Scott Luzak. We're sorry to see him leave, even though he gave us about 7 months' notice. I asked him for 18 several times, and he only gave us 7. We're going to be talking about potential candidate for hire tomorrow at our meeting, and I think we'll be in good hands if things look good. And other than that, the plant upgrade that we're in the middle of still, that's been phased, is going along nicely. So I'll give a synopsis of the improvements we've had over the last 4 or 5 years at probably, I'll wait till Q1 because we've got budget and other things coming up. But it's a good facility in great shape. We've got capacity. We're going to be around for a long time without needing for any kind of future expansion. So we're in great fiscal and physical shape. So.
Great, thank you very much. G, Police Commission, did you have a meeting, Jackie?
We did, but we really discussed one item on the agenda, and that was the goals for the chief that he had set, really per the direction of the Common Council. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Sounds good. H, Library Board, Ms. Henry.
Yep, I will keep it short. They are continuing with the book sales every Saturday, so stop by there. Next Tuesday, July 25th, from 4 to 8, they are doing a fundraiser at Panera. So stop by and go get there. They will be donating proceeds to Friends of the Library. And our August meeting has been rescheduled to August 22nd to allow time for the library director to get the budget together, and so that we can review that before it comes to the Common Council.
Sounds good. All right, I, Zoning Board of Appeals, assume nothing, Jackie, correct? J, Promotion and Tourism Commission.
We're working on our budgeting process. Our executive director, Deb Smith, has put together the first draft, so we're getting that underway right now for '24 budget.
Sounds good.
Season
Glad you're
starts.
working on it early.
Season starts.
Yep. K, Lake Country Fire and Rescue Commission. I'll refer you to their website for their upcoming meetings when posted. L, Lake Country Fire and Rescue Board, Mr. Grimmer.
Our next meeting is July 19th, this Wednesday at Station 2. We do have, last report off was that 6 out of the 7 new hires that we had slated for 2023 have been hired. The last one was hired sometime in June, and 5 of those 6 are entry-level employees. So there should be some budgeted savings there. Otherwise, Wednesday is our next meeting.
So I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch all that. 5 are new hires?
So we hired 6
Total.
of the total of
Okay.
the allocated 7.
Okay,
5 of those 6 are entry-level employees.
okay. And 1 has more experience.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. Great. We will move on to M, Deer Management Committee.
Last meeting was June 20th. We're currently working on relocating a couple of deer stands in the Delhart area. We had a work day on Saturday and made some progress. We're going to have another work day this coming Saturday, and we expect to finish that work. We're also having an open house on Saturday, the 19th of August, just to let potential hunters come out, see where the stands are, and ask questions if they have any.
Well, that's great. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's the first time we've done that.
I think it is.
Yeah, great. Season's coming up. Okay, and no other committees or commissions. 9, no unfinished business. 10, mayor's report. No report. 11, new business. A discussion and possible action regarding the approval and funding of a proposed memorial honoring former Mayor Ed McAleer as requested by Alderperson Iker.
Yeah, thanks. As you know, Mayor McAleer passed away last October, so a memorial seems fitting. He's, aside from being a 14-year mayor, he spent most of his, most of a couple decades plus serving in different committees and just the city in general. So it's taken a while. I apologize for that, but just finding a site and a way to appropriately just recognize Mayor Ed's service has come to fruition. I had a brief presentation. My wife stood in for me with Lynn Holton at the Park and Rec Commission 2 months ago and proposed what's in the packet as a potential location, Fireman's Park, because among other causes that Ed held near and dear, his support for a world-class fire department was one of them, and he helped see not just the merger come through, but just to support the fire department and get us to paramedic status was a priority. So Fireman's Park seems apt for a location, and there's 2 orphaned benches that were sort of put there as a feature when the trail ended. Seems like a good spot to put it, specifically within hand grenade throwing distance from there is probably where it's going to end up. Tom and the crew are going to look for the right level ground, make sure there's nothing, no encumbrances for utilities or anything near it. But as far as funding goes, I thought a lot about it, and I think the most appropriate thing to do would be to ask that we just simply approve that the city help administratively deal with donations and allow city staff to accept them into a fund earmarked for Ed, and that way we'll just be asking staff to maybe process 2 checks, one for a rock and one for a plaque, and then they'd be purchased without sales tax, and people who gave donations would have a write-off for their, a deduction on their taxes. So, Ed was good at taking it to the people when there was any kind of decision to be made that was big. So I'm taking it to the people that are listening and people that might appreciate what Ed did for the community to stop by City Hall and drop off a check. Just need, a little bit of money to make it come true, and looking to try and get it in by October 23rd, which is the date of his passing. So I think it'd be a good timing. We've already got several donations coming in, so anybody interested in contributing, please do so. My motion tonight would be to ask that we allow city staff to facilitate the receiving of funds, writing of a couple checks from the administration standpoint, and allow DPW to coordinate the placement and just getting it set up, and as far as the rock and that. So I'll make a motion to allow city staff to participate in that manner.
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion?
Just a comment, the Park and Rec did vote unanimously approve the placement and location of the memorial, so.
Good. Did they write any checks?
That did not address funding.
They're open to, okay, sorry.
One other item for discussion regarding that would be put some kind of notice or request on our city's webpage and Facebook page, just to.
That'd be fine. I think that'd be a good idea. That's it comes under the overhead of administration, right? There we go.
Who had the second? I apologize.
I did.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to 11B, discussion and possible action to approve a proposal to contract with Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission to perform an update to the city's aquatic plant management plan for Nagawicca Lake, as required for the city to be eligible for a new permit for mechanical harvesting. Tom?
Yeah, as indicated in my memo, the city's 5-year harvesting permit expired At the end of 2021, after that permit expires, we're eligible for 3 one-year extensions of the permit. So that takes us through years 2022, 2023, and 2024. We will need a new permit for 2025. And in order to be eligible for a new permit, we need to do an update of our aquatic plant management plan, which involves hiring experts to survey the entire lake with regards to the types of aquatic plants and the quantity of aquatic plants in the various areas, compare that to the last time a plan was done to see the general health of the lake with regards to the aquatic plant life. SewerPack has provided a proposal for us. They've done this type of work for us in the past. They are typically very economical, as their work is generally subsidized. Their quoted price is $10,000, and this work would be done next year. And the reason why I'm bringing this request to you tonight as opposed to through the normal budget process is that there is a grant available. In order for us to apply for the grant, we need to have a pre-application in by, I think it's September 15th, and then our final application in by November 15th. And it's a grant program that is pretty promising with regards to our chances of getting funding. And if we were to get funding, it pays for 2/3 of the cost. So if we get the funding, our cost will be just over $3,300. But if we don't get the funding, we'll be responsible for the full $10,000. But it's something that we need to do anyways if we intend to continue to do weed harvesting on the lake. So my recommendation would be to, for the council to approve moving forward with the contract with SewerPack. And if you do that, then I will come back next month with a grant application for your approval.
And just to clarify, that's going for the 2024 budget?
Correct.
It will go on that, okay.
Yes.
I'll move to approve the contract with SewerPack for the weed aquatic plant management plan.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay. Wilkin had the second?
Second.
Price had the second.
Who had this, are we disagreement, who was first? Paul
Well,
first, okay. All right.
It's a lake welfare thing, you know?
Is there any discussion? Hearing none?
The only point I had is when we, on lake welfare, we did this 8-9 years ago, and it took us like 5 or 6 years to get the report. Is that good?
Different.
That's a whole different deal?
Yeah, whole different deal.
Okay, good. You wouldn't have that long to wait for.
No, this is a relatively quick memo type update to the existing plan.
Okay.
Not a whole new plan.
Oh, no. Okay, good.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Okay, we'll move on to 11C, discussion of possible action regarding proposed First Amendment to the Lake Country Fire and Rescue Intermunicipal Agreement. Tom?
Yeah, as you'll recall, in June, I brought forth to the council a proposed amendment from the town of Genesee that would have required the city to fully fund the fire board's 2024 budget at the existing cost allocation methodology of the IMA. That's not what our referendum was for, so we did reject that amendment, and you had asked me to come back with a proposed amendment that would reflect what our voters approved in the referendum. I do have 3 versions here, and the first version is really what the council based their referendum on, and that was, what would our cost be if we changed the funding methodology and we eliminated the fixed allocation and based everything on the formula in the IMA, and that formula is the population call volume value of improvements formula. And based on that, we came up with a fire fee and what that corresponding contribution would be. So if the council wanted to pass that version, that fully reflects what the council's intention was when we passed the referendum. but that's unlikely to gain any support from any of our partner municipalities. Version number 2 is sticking with the same contribution for the city of Delafield, but assuming that all other municipalities would fund at the same level that we are. It would only support a budget of about $3.7 million as opposed to the $4.7 million budget that LCFR Fire Board is asking for. I did leave it open-ended, so it's not a not to exceed 3.7. There's been some talk that other municipalities might fund based on the $4.7 million budget, even if the city's funding at a lower level. So that's left open that they could do that. So that amendment would only remove the CPI plus 2% restriction for 2024, and would result in a lower operating budget than what LCFR is recommending. The last version is something that I included because the town of Genesee came back and asked me if I would include this. What it is they've asked, why can't we permanently eliminate the CPI plus 2% restriction on the budget? They make a good point in that even if that restriction is removed, any municipality has full control over limiting the budget in the future as much as they want to. But the counter argument is, that was probably the most important inclusion in the LCFR agreement from multiple municipalities' perspective with regards to sustainability within the levy limit environment that we're in. That's what allowed us to increase our fire funding as necessary and have our levy limit adjust in relationship to that increase. But I think if we go this direction, we'd be giving up the leverage that we do have, whereas we've said all along, hey, if the agreement needs to be amended to allow us to exceed CPI plus 2%, then we should also be looking at the funding allocation as well, because the increases that we're talking about are far in excess of anything that was ever contemplated with the CPI plus 2% restriction that's in the agreement. So I would recommend against consideration of version number 3.
So I have a question. Generally speaking, it's been my understanding that any municipality could pay more than what the formula said per the IMA. Is that not necessarily true? And that the removal of what I think is simply a budgeting portion, CPI plus 2%, has to be removed for them to pay more? I guess I've heard it both ways. So I'll make sure I understand it. Should be on.
It's around.
No, I'm using a wireless.
Another one, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a two-part question. First of all, if nothing is changed with an amendment, Lake Country Fire and Rescue cannot propose a budget to the municipalities that exceeds CPI plus 2%.
Understood.
So they would have to propose a budget that's probably somewhere in the vicinity of about $3 million. But the second part of your question, there's nothing in the agreement that states that any municipality couldn't contribute more than their allocation that they're required to pay.
And there's nothing in version 2 of this, version 2 of the amendment that would restrict other municipalities from contributing more.
That's correct.
And so my question, Matt, is, and I think Tom answered it, there's nothing prohibiting them from doing it without any of these amendments.
True.
So,
But Lake Country Fire and Rescue
But
Board,
without the go ahead.
their proposed budget would have to be around $3 million.
Yeah.
Right. But they didn't,
And don't we want them to be able to put forth a budget that properly reflects the spending level that they're likely going to be approved for.
I'm just trying to go back to what the rules are of the IMA, and it's just for discussion purposes, right? There's no other agenda here, right? I'm just trying to make sure we understand what the rules are, that they could pay more, and quite frankly, the budget they passed didn't follow the IMA.
Yeah, but
Right. But
if
given
we, if
that.
we don't do anything, the Lake Country Fire and Rescue can't propose the budget that our taxpayers voted for.
And we're providing certainty to the fire board
For 1 year,
for 1 year. And
with version 2.
if council goes along with version 2, yes.
We've agreed that they should be able
So
to
wait,
exceed the CPI plus 2. So we need an amendment to allow
Our
them
voters
to do
agreed to that, yep.
The version 2 is what the gentleman from the town of Delafield asked for too, so.
Correct.
You're in agreement as well?
What they're saying is that they're unable to pass version 1. So given the choice between version 1 and version 2, they're choosing version 2.
But version 2 us accepting that we're just doing a lower budget? That we're saying that we're only approving a lower budget for fire and rescue than what they've
Correct.
asked for?
Correct.
Okay, so I have an issue with this because we aren't, like, on principle, the whole point of us approving the budget that the amount that we did was that we hope that the other municipalities will step up and they will be fully funded. So I have a hard time approving a budget saying that we're approving a lower budget when that's not our intention. Our intention is that they would be fully funded based on what we put forward. And I understand that that's not likely to pass, but that's not on us if that doesn't pass.
When you say fully funded, we're talking, our intention was that they have to pay more than what the original IMA requires them to pay.
Right, which we are as well. I mean, which is what we're paying well outside of what that would have required us to pay. So
I'm talking about a
this
higher
is-
percentage.
But this is a completely different thing than when the council, when we all entered into this agreement, and this was prior to me being on the board, so
Okay.
this wasn't the intention of what we would have, I would hope that we wouldn't have gone into this knowing that this was going to be the case.
I would say the intention at the time, and correct me if my history is foggy, but at the time of the IMA 7, the city gained a few things. Number one was we gained support for capital projects, right? We didn't have to pay so much for capital expenditures if we had 7 municipalities. We gained a little ground in lower operating costs, and more significantly is we gained response time, especially on the east side of Lake Nag. Significant response time when you added the town of Delafield station. And so those were as I recall, and Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, those were the big victories for us. We brought in other municipalities at competitive costs to them for those purposes. Having said that, that was a time, that was 2020. That was while the chief had done a fabulous job alerting us to, paid on call is this free service, it's eventually going to go away. There wasn't the crisis staffing that existed at the time that we went into this IMA 7. That crisis staffing then came a year and a half later. And so, I mean, hindsight is 2020. Had we been approached with, 2.5 million potential contribution instead of the 1 million that we were faced with, I'm sure our choices may have been very different, but that wasn't the scenario in 2020. The scenario was, this is the staffing you have, this staffing is good, we don't anticipate any major changes, you're making some ground on operating, not a ton, you're making some significant ground on capital, and we significantly improved response time on the east side. That's why we entered into that IMA 7. It was a good decision at the time, and we brought along partners at a lower, we brought along partners that could, that were able to come along because the costs were reasonable to them. Would you agree with that, Tom?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and I believe hindsight is 20/20. Like, we couldn't have known that this was going to happen.
No, and this isn't a, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. The chief
Right.
does a fabulous job. No one could expect the fallout from the pandemic.
But at the same time,
significant fallout.
but at the same time, I don't think that entire fallout falls, because I feel like we're taking the brunt of that now, and it's a different situation, and we're trying to accommodate, I feel like we are trying to accommodate the change in circumstance and still make it work, and it's.
No, and I agree with you, and I also want to point out historically, when this council was debating the fire fee, the referendum, we were debating it at a time when, just within a year, Western Lakes referendum had failed.
Right.
5 municipalities out of the 7 turned them down. And then months after that, the McGuanago referendum only passed by 50 or 60 votes. We were very chastened by those votes and looked not only to equity within the funding formula, but also to what could pass. And I recall discussions that over 500 might be a disincentive, might turn some people off. And so that's the reason, one of the reasons why we funded the way we did. And Tom had all 7 municipalities had a fire fee like the city of Delafield does. How would that funding reflect the Lake Country Fire and Rescue budget? If all the other 6 municipalities had the same fire fee, the $450.
Yeah, so about a year ago, we went through that exercise with the fire department management staff, and my recollection is about $370 some would be the fire fee if all 7 municipalities implemented it.
Right. And so I'm not throwing the other 6 municipalities under the bus. They entered into agreement 3-4 years ago with the expectation that this lasts 7 years, and I absolutely understand their position, but circumstances have changed. There has been a substantive change to the expenses on Lake Country Fire and Rescue such that I believe renegotiation has to occur. Having said that, I'm not in favor of version 1. They already know what we want. I don't believe in rubbing their nose in it, and the town wouldn't be able to pass it anyway. So I would feel comfortable in allowing some time, passing version 2, allowing some time to negotiate, getting in a third-party negotiator. I don't even object to the city footing that bill if it's reasonable, and allowing the city's contribution, which the city of residents supported, and they voted for that fire fee for improved response times, and that's what we have to deliver. And this is a step, I think, towards getting there. If other municipalities want to continue to fund at a higher level, there's nothing in version 2 that prohibits them from doing that.
Matt, I think it's important to state the other part of that allocation agreement. We agreed to the current cost allocation for the budget up to CPI plus 2%. We never, it doesn't apply to a $4.7 million budget. That allocation doesn't apply to anything beyond
Correct.
$3 million budget at this point.
Yep,
So
that's a good
we're meeting our agreement. We're not failing to meet any part of the agreement.
And I also want to express that we are, these, and I know you all know this, these are good people on both sides of the table. Wales, Genesee, Neshota, Shaniqua, Town, et cetera. These are all good people trying to provide services and fast and reasonable response times. And I understand their position, but we have to negotiate. We have to come to the table. There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues that, a lot of ways that the city has stepped forward in the last 3 years. There was the 2019 surplus, which was close to that was generated by the original 3 members, Shaniqua, Nashotah, the city of Delafield. That surplus, we fought to have the city retain it. We lost that fight because, well, we lost that fight. But that was revenue that I believe strongly should have stayed with the city of Delafield. It was generated by the city of Delafield. It should have stayed there. We lost that. We also utilized the fund balance of $250,000 through the plan that we approved through the Village of Economowoc Lake to fund the 2023 budget. That was $250,000.
That was over $400,000.
That was over $400,000, but the city's portion was $250,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the money that I'm talking about. And so I think the city has demonstrated a couple times their willingness to go that extra mile to support Lake Country Fire and Rescue.
I appreciate, Matt, that you're giving me a lot of insights, and I appreciate that. And we have good people who came into an agreement years ago, and they're simply asking us to stay in that agreement to which we did commit. And so while I agree it's frustrating, I also think we might want to have some kind of some person come in to work with everybody, whoever it is, too. But right now, we need to, dance and play the game to the rules that we agreed to when we signed on.
And the chief had the foresight to think of this as well, and that's why the chief suggested that arbiter, that negotiator, back in January or February. That's why this council had the foresight to approve our contribution towards that arbiter, that negotiator. And it may be, if that ever does come to fruition, that we have the same funding formula that we have now. I'm not saying that we don't, but we absolutely, I'm strongly in favor of having those negotiations. There are a lot of issues, as Tom mentioned in his memo as well, there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed.
This funding, so sticking with the agreement is one thing. What's in front of us, what we're proposing, is breaking the agreement. I mean, everyone has to understand that. We are violating the agreement, and the most core aspect of that agreement, which is what was the most appealing part of it for the city of Delafield, was a built-in stability with a cap. The labor situation and the cost of personnel exploded as far as the budget goes, and that blew this formula away. I mean, it made it untenable for us to accept it on the existing terms, and that's why we came up with the proposal we came up with for the referendum that was out there. And this has all happened in the last 10 months, really, is when we were really approached with this conundrum. It was like August. And so we had to do a lot of things very quickly, and none of it's been perfect. I mean, I think we'd even tweak some of where there's things we'd tweak, for sure, if we had more notice. But so I'm suggesting that we might want to think about buying time and adding more flexibility to any of these options, and think about something closer to version 1, and that would be to say that we would be we'd be suspending the CPI plus 2% for 2024, but we'd also be eliminating the fixed funding formula and allowing other municipalities to contribute what they can contribute for 2024, and understanding we got to go to the table and figure this out over the next year. That would probably give us more than the $3.7 million budget that option 2 would give us. Understanding that some municipalities may be able to overfund from what they were bound to by their existing referendum, just like we increased it. We've got a set ceiling at the 1.5-ish mark, right? 1.54. If we spend all that on option 2, which is, we're really close, right? 1.541 versus 1.589. CPI plus 2% means we go back and raise that 450 next year. And that's what we'd be signing up. That's what we'd be committing to with version 2. We're saying, yeah, thanks for the $450. Next year it's $472 or or whatever it would be. Because CPI plus 2% with the existing fixed funding formula is going to raise our budget by more than 0.5%. You know what I mean? I think that if we suspend both the fixed funding formula as well as CPI plus 2% for next year, we've got a year to figure it out, and people can throw as much money at 2024 as they can afford, like we are doing, and we've got a year to renegotiate whether it's a different version of the fixed funding formula, whether it's a different version of the shared allocation. We've got a lot of smart people and very willing cooperative communities to get this thing done. And I disagree that this has anything to do with ego. It was brought up a couple times, and ego means,
Almost
you know,
offensive.
let me pick up the check. I got this, no problem. Give me the check. I got it. That's ego. We're being very pragmatic and practical about a big budget crunch situation that caught a lot of people off guard. No one signed up for it when we signed the IMA 7. And it's impacting everybody differently. Let's all accept that. We're not the only ones, but signing on to version 2 of this means that we're past the 450 in the next version of this budget. And I think that would be a mistake. So I'd be all for recommending that we eliminate the fixed funding formula for next year and eliminating the fixed funding formula in the agreement and suspending CPI plus 2% for next year. And that leaves it open-ended as far as what we come up with a formula as a group going into 2025.
The town of Delafield literally can't do that.
Can't do what?
Can't base their 2024 contribution based on exclusively on the funding formula, excluding the fixed formula.
Eliminate both then.
And say what? People
Say,
can give whatever they want, make a donation?
That sounds like what we're being asked to do. I mean, I would say, do what you think is right, because
We got to have a legally enforceable document that prevents someone from saying, we'll give $10,000.
Yep.
Well, the legally enforceable document right now means we're going to go down to 3 million, right? If we end up at CPI plus 2%.
Correct.
I'd be more open to depend on the common sense and good nature of our neighbors than to. I think version 2 just essentially says that everyone else is kicking the can down the road. Delafield's where Delafield is, and a year into our referendum, we're overspending our 450. I think that's a big mistake.
A 5% increase year over year, let's say 24 to 25 would be a 475.
Yeah, I feel like we completely misled everybody about, we're absorbing a bigger increase in our budget than anybody else based on the fixed funding formula. And it's not that we're not willing to pay what we intended to pay when we went into the agreement. We're saying not only are we willing to pay more, we're going to continue to pay more as you increase it more. We get impacted more than anybody else. And that doesn't seem appropriate. Like I said, I think the appeal to the IMA was the stability in the CPI plus 2% that it gave us to help manage our long-term budget. And other people were attracted to it because of that same stability from a established fire department service. And everybody rallying around the need to increase the budget by such a large amount in 1 year way disproportionately impacts the city of Delafield and the other communities. And going to version 2 just smooths that out for a little while, and then it goes right back to where it was.
Unless it's renegotiated.
Why would you?
Yeah, I don't see any incentive for them to renegotiate it if we're going to accept this at this point. I mean, that was the whole basis of what we did for the referendum, was that we were going to present this, that we weren't going to underfund the thing. And that's what this is saying. We're going to cut I do not support version 2.
I mean, was it the assumption that we would never be increasing the fire board for the Lake Country funding year over year to accommodate for inflation?
No, not at all. I'm saying that. So here's what number 2 means to the other communities. We're underfunding at our 450, and next year it goes up, and we're still underfunding. That's what it's telling, that's what we're being cast as, and that's not true, in my opinion. I mean,
it can only go up by the amount that we allow it to. We
Well-
could say it goes up 0% if we want to.
Yeah, but we came to the table, as
Right.
he's mentioned, we've made accommodations over and over and over again, and there is no accommodation in version 2. We are accepting that we're going to keep the same formula, and we're just not going to fund it fully. We're not going to fund what's been requested.
Well, I
mean,
would
that's what that says.
Yeah, but I would acknowledge that other communities have stepped up to the table too. Their budgets have increased on a percentage-wise significantly. The town of Delafield has stepped up and passed their own referendum.
But not disproportionate to not in a way that would be equitable based on the
Equitable based on our reality, yeah. Not equitable based on their reality, but I still think we're right.
Okay. Given that we have come to the table and shown that we are willing to work over and over and over
Yes.
again and have received very little reciprocation, I'm not okay with us saying we're just going to fund this at a lower rate. I mean, that's not what our intention was when we were doing that. I mean, we're not trying to underfund the fire department. We are hoping that everyone will step up and that they will get the funding that they need to fully support our communities. And I don't feel like version 2 is saying that. I feel like that's us admitting that taking responsibility for their lower budget, which is not what our intention was at all.
I think it's important to look at, I'm assuming you wrote this, Tom, it says, I know council may want to approve version 1 as it fully reflects our position. It may also want to approve version 2 as a contingency, recognizing that version 1 will almost certainly not be approved by all partner municipalities. So do we want to fall on our sword and approve version 1? Or do we want to try to, at least it is not the ideal solution, but do we want to work on or vote for version 2 simply to give us a 1-year opportunity to come together? I mean, we're talking about the other municipalities not working with us, but only one person came to the citizens' comments. We haven't been at the table. I haven't been there, so I'm going to take that, but maybe if we all talk together and gave the cities some time, we could maybe come to an agreement. It's not going to happen with version 1.
No.
But does version 2 put us in this same position 1 year from now? I don't want to say, okay, we'll give in this year, and we'll talk about it next year.
I don't know that we're giving in. Giving in would be funding at 1.7, 1.8.
Not changing the formula
1.9.
in
Thank you.
this. No, not changing the structure of it is what would be accepting that we're going to be funding the majority of it going forward. If I feel like if the structure does not change,
Allocation?
yeah, I mean if the structure of the allocation doesn't change now, it's not going to change next year.
Well, that's
or
not
the
to say
year
that it won't. You could be presented with
I
a
don't
budget
have-
that doesn't change it in 2024, and you can simply say no, in which case it would revert to the 2024 budget, and you would have the same allocation that you do now. You could say, no, you didn't, we're not satisfied that you stepped up to that the other municipalities did not negotiate. They held their powder and just hoped that we would acquiesce eventually due to public pressure.
But I feel that way now. I feel that we're there now. We've
That's what we're
already.
saying now.
I know, but
We've
to
already
Alderman
done
Eicher's
that
point,
multiple
this.
times, and we're
No,
there
well,
now.
To Alderman Eicher's point, and he's absolutely correct, it's been 10 months, and this is a very slow process. This is government at work, right? It takes a long time, and this has been, in my opinion, a very rushed process. In the last 10 months, we've been presented with a 4-year plan. We've been asked to debate a referendum, a fire fee, what our contributions are going to be. Is our universal fee okay? Let's put it to referendum. Is it binding? Is it not binding? How are we going to structure that referendum? How are we going to, what number are we shooting for? We get through this, we have the referendum passes, we have intermunicipal negotiations that go nowhere. And now we're faced back here. I think that's a lot in 10 months.
I agree. How about if there was version 2 with a 5-year sunset on the fixed formula? And you said for starting in 2020, for 2025, 2026, 2027, it decreases 20% of the overall formula until it's gone in 5 years. That's a long-range way to wean us off of that, and we're still going to be dealing with the inherent inequity with how this increase has impacted our residents, but after 5 years, that will be eliminated.
And does that coincide with the 7-year expiration of the contract?
That's not my intent. My intent is just to start to set a timer on that dissolving itself, and also give ample time for people to adjust their own municipal budgets to make up the slack.
And I think, though, if we go version 1 is kind of the message from the other side is we're jamming it down their throats. It's our way or the highway. If we go with the version 2, it's saying, okay, guys, we're going to cooperate. We want some cooperation back from you now. Let's sit down together with an arbitrator, whatever, and work this out before the next year and get this thing done.
I'm suggesting
then a year from now, if they don't do anything, okay.
Well, I'm suggesting version 2 with starting in 2025, that the fixed funding formula goes to 80%.
Yeah, but that's one more thing you got to screw around with. 20% every year, 15%, 18, 22.
No, 20 a year for 5 years is 100%.
What do you mean by 80%? It's currently 65% of the budget goes through that.
He means you eliminate.
You eliminate 20% of that portion of the formula every year for 5 years.
So the fixed formula is, the fixed portion is 46%, you eliminate 11% every year for.
All municipalities do that.
Yeah.
That fixed funding formula goes away after 5 years.
Which does coincide with the sunsetting of the IMA. And then the municipalities might come back and say, look, we don't want to work with the city of Delafield anymore because they forced this amendment down our throats, and we don't want to play with you guys anymore. Go find another municipality to partner with.
Instead of changing what each municipality's percentage is, you'd have to change how much goes through that formula.
Right.
Matt was suggesting that everyone's percentages would go down, but I mean, those percentages need to equal 100%.
Well, yeah, relatively speaking.
But that's something an arbitrator with the individual cities can figure out over the next year. To put it in an amendment, it makes it so binding that I don't think the rest of them are going to buy it.
Understood, Paul, but we've asked other municipalities to do the third-party thing, and they've refused.
This version 2 is going to pass, and it's going to sit. No one's going to do anything. That's my cynicism, is that if we pass version 2, where's the fire to put anything out as
And
far
thus, the beginning of kicking the can starts.
Yeah.
No, it's going to sit, and we're going to be $475 next year, $495 the next year, and there's no closing of the gap for the people. You know, you've got a couple with a $500,000 house in the city of Delafield on one side of 83 that, let's just say they paid $300 last year. Next year they're paying $450. With the referendum in the town, the same valued house across the street, they were paying $200. Theirs went up $100 instead of $150. I mean, the disparity grew a lot. And we need, I think, to be fair to this group of homeowners that are receiving the same service out of the same fire station. I'm just talking about the person in the single-family home. Delafield was okay signing up, saying that just because you're stuck in the city, you're paying $150 more a year. And it's only going to go up CPI plus 2%. All of a sudden, bam, it went up 40%, and that's a big number. I don't know. I should have a chart in front of me, but I think the best way toward equity is to eliminate the fixed funding formula, and why not wean ourselves off of it over time?
Tim, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. So right now, 65% of the budget goes through the fixed funding formula. If we reduce that 65 by 20% each year, then 2025, 52% goes through there, 39% the year after, 26% the year after, 13% the year after, and then finally we get to the point where nothing gets funded
Yeah.
through the fixed.
So that's not jumping into cold water like version 1 is. It's somewhere between version 1 and version 2, saying over the course of time, people have to make the adjustment with their own budgets. It gives you some time to plan. And it's still going to impact us to that tune where our fee's going to go up to whatever, $475 next year.
But yeah, we're still in the pursuit of what we promised. I mean, this
And
is
it's
what
at least we're inching toward it in the absence of any other effort that might occur.
Okay, but, and I appreciate that, and I think it's not an unreasonable suggestion. You lose, then there are no, I mean, we're essentially negotiating with ourselves. There is no more negotiation on the 250 fund balance that was designated. That's gone. There is no negotiation on
In
the
all
200.
reality, do you think we're ever going to get that back?
Hold on. So there's two different fund balances out there.
Yes.
One was $212,000. That was the amount left over
Call it
for
the
LCFR
surplus.
3. There's a totally different fund balance of $250,000. That's an auditor's note in minutes that belongs to the city and Shaniqua and Neshota. And my understanding is the board hasn't even contemplated distributing that.
That's correct,
The 212 got denied,
correct.
not to say it couldn't come back for reconsideration. And that was just denied by one community, right? We had 6 of the 7 communities
Correct.
agreeing to that distribution.
Yep. And what I'm saying is those issues, I mean, there's no negotiating on those. It would be a challenge to negotiate those issues if we dictate the solution. And you raise the possibility that when the IMA sunsets in 5 years, is the city of Delafield a good partner to work with? We're a big partner to work with. We're necessary. We might be big enough that we can't, too big to fail, too big to not partner with, but I don't know that I would want to take that chance.
Another question, it says discussion and possible action. Does that mean we can kick this can down the
You
road
sure
to maybe
can.
get a little bit more information about this before we,
But
I don't
they
know.
need to
That's
plan
just a
their
question.
budget.
Let me say this. Even if we approve it tonight, I'm not sure how quickly the other 6 municipalities can act on it. And the chief needs to propose his budget by September 1st. I think he's got to present to the board. So I'm not even sure if we're going to get this amendment done. I mean, the chief's told me he's got his budget put together already. I don't know how he's done that if he can't exceed CPI plus 2%.
He did it last year.
But he was also, last year he proposed 2 budgets, one that conformed with the CPI plus 2% restriction and one that was the needs-based budget.
I would assume that we're going to see a needs-based budget on Wednesday night that is reflective of the 4-year, 5-year staffing plan, 4-year staffing plan. But not reflective of the budget that was passed by the city of Delafield, but the referendum that was passed by the city of Delafield. But that's just speculation on my part.
But my point is that we're already very late in the budget process to even be approving it tonight, given the path it still has to travel with other municipalities. And if we propose something that may likely not be agreeable to all the other communities, that just extends that path out even further.
Well, I want to find a way that can, I mean, is there some rider, is there some future decision that will hold people's feet to the fire to prevent what Alderman Eicher mentioned? The inevitability of a 5% to 475 a 500, a 525.
It already exists.
And you can say no, the council can say no to that at any time. And we revert to the previous year's budget.
Plus CPI plus 2%, which is what we're signing up for version 2, which is that 475, 5.25. You know what I mean? CPI is big now. It used to be a trivial number. Now it's a real number. I mean, it's.
Are we bound to CPI plus 2%?
No.
No, we're not.
Not?
No, that's just the
cap.
maximum it can go
That's the
up.
cap.
And any municipality could say, I
That's-
believe the
you're
budget
right,
should only
you're
go up 1% or 0% or, and it's really the lowest common denominator that dictates in this agreement. Whoever thinks the budget should be lowest dictates.
And that's what we're doing right now.
And so if there is a strong feeling on the council that we go this far, version 2, but no farther, and that's been expressed by a number of people on this council, maybe that should be reassurance to support version 2. But I understand the reservations.
I'm not, I don't agree with version 2 as just the way that it's presented, that we're approving a lower budget. I have issues with the way that that's even.
We're proposing, the version 2 is our contribution. It doesn't prohibit other municipalities from contributing more, from contributing the equivalent of what a fire fee might be, that 373 number that Tom mentioned, which would be equitable with what the city of Delafield has done.
But it doesn't take any steps to move forward with what our intention behind that is. That's what I like what Alderman Eicher has suggested, that we're presenting something that is a compromise. It's still moving towards what our intention is, and also funding it the way that our constituents have agreed to. So I think there needs to be not just we're funding version 2, but that we're funding with the intention of moving to a more equitable agreement, that we're not accepting the current structure the way that it is. I mean, I know that the other communities know where we stand on it, and I'm not in favor of what people are suggesting of shoving it down their throats, but I think there needs to be something in there that says we are serious about moving towards some change.
I will say there is a lot of passion on the fire board, and from my experience, a lot of passion in other communities about fully funding the 4-year plan, the 26 new hires. And if they want to get to that point, I think it is absolutely clear that those municipalities are going to have to contribute more. But I can't guarantee that.
What Tom echoes here rather softly in the statement in version 2 here, about, is that in version 2? Yeah, about the fact that we're being perceived as under contributing to the full budget level, and that we'd be relegated to a lesser amount of service. That echoes what Matt Fennig said in the meeting, where he said perhaps then this station is the one that blacks out first, and we're sitting in the building that we built 10 years ago. And that really stung, and that was really, it echoes the sentiments here, and that's coming from the chief. That's the wrong tone to take with your customers, and especially on a per capita basis, when our citizens are paying more per property value and per head than most of the other 7. Now, Shaniqua's up there for sure, but and maybe Village of Oconomowoc Lake, but when we're told we've got egos from somebody else, that's another negative tone that's really hard to deal with when we're just trying to smooth out the bump that we took the brunt of. Everyone else got the same, $1 more is $1 more, and $2 more is $2 more for us. But somehow we've got to eliminate that tone that the highest per capita contributors are the first ones to go dark. That still rings horribly with me, and that's, I don't know. So that's got to get out of this conversation, and I'd like to have something from the board assure us that there's an acknowledgement that everyone's doing their best.
Well, and I think you're right, and I think the people that are the municipalities that are affected by the city fire department going dark is not entirely the city of Delafield. It's the village of Oconomowoc Lake is affected most. The west side of the city of Delafield is affected second most. But we still have the Neshota station. We still have the town station. The east side of Delafield is hardly affected at all. The town, if you want to talk about the impact of blackouts, and the chief could speak to this better, but the impact of blackouts or brownouts, the city of Delafield station is a little bit of Delafield, a little bit of the town, and a lot of village of Oconomowoc Lake. All those three municipalities have incentive to come to the negotiating table. Neshota, Shaniqua, Genesee, and Wales do not. Their service levels will likely stay the same.
I think it's more about the threats that,
Well-
I think it's not so much about
I wouldn't characterize them as threats.
It's a reality.
You know, if brownouts are a necessity, and I trust Chief Fennig that they are, that his plan is not unreasonable. But anyone that mentions, but I would agree with Alderman Eicher that anyone who suggests a lesser level of service attributed to the city of Delafield, those are unfortunate comments, and I would absolutely agree with you that comments like that really don't have a place in these negotiations. And we're all good people. We're all trying to do the best for our constituents, and we have to remember, we're not tribal here. The city, the town, Neshota, we are the same people. Right? We have our little fiefdoms, but look, we represent less than 1,000 people, all of us. It is laughable to a degree. We're not different. We are the same, and we need to start acting like that.
Okay, so excellent discussion. I think it helped everybody understand where we're at today, so thank you, everyone. We're either going to get a motion or we're going to move on in the agenda.
Do I make a motion?
I was just considering that. I'll make a motion to advance version 2 of the amendment to the IMA.
I will second it.
All right, is there any additional discussion?
What's the incentive for the other communities under?
The incentive for the town is that continued lower service levels, increased response times affects the town of Delafield off Cushing Park Road. The incentive for Oconomowoc Lake is the brownouts, so the same station affect them. Obviously, the city of Delafield has its own incentives. The other municipalities, Shaniqua and Neshota, Wales and Genesee, they may not have that incentive. However, there are leverage points, as Tom mentioned. And I think it is very clear to me that if there is a failed negotiation, this time next year, there will be zero increase in that in the city's allocation, because if the same council members are represented here tonight as next year, you have, I've heard that there won't be an increase, and we'll revert to the previous year's budget, and no one wants that. I think those are the leverage points.
I didn't
Yeah,
get
but
that
I've heard,
sense from our meeting with them.
yeah, but I've been hearing from everybody, nobody wants them to not get their funding this year, and that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So I have a hard time believing that they're going to negotiate. I do not think that this is in the city's best interest.
And I appreciate
Negotiate this year, why would they next year?
I appreciate that, but I think we also have an obligation to, well, strike that. I appreciate that.
What were you going to say?
Nah, I was wrong.
Oh, an obligation to spend the amount of money that our voters told us to spend?
That's what I was going to say.
I think this needs some work.
I
think
agree we
Tim had
do. I just,
some
I
ideas.
believe that we should,
Well,
and
we
I
could
think
s-
that we should, but I think that there needs to be language that encourages the change in the reform, because that was part of our referendum, that we just, that in the language that we brought to the people was that there was an effort for change in the structure, and that isn't represented in version 2. So I don't believe that version 2 represents what we presented to our constituents.
I don't think we presented to the constituents the idea of changing the formula. We just told them that,
Yeah, we did. We
No, we didn't.
absolutely did.
no, we didn't. We just said that passing the referendum would ensure that we would retain the 7 employees hired in 2023. We didn't go beyond that. It became too complicated to go beyond that.
This is a real good start, but it needs work. I think we need to come back next month with a
I think it's a start, though,
revision.
they'll get the other cities saying, okay, maybe the city of Delafield will work with us.
Given the history,
They don't, they don't.
I don't think that it will.
So just one point of clarification, I think it's the very first question I asked. There's nothing without passing this amendment that prohibits the city from giving Lake Country and Fire the $450 that we get in the fee. Is that correct?
That's correct, but then we could contribute that amount and everyone else could contribute based on a $3 million budget.
We can only control
Well,
us.
Yeah.
And
that's-
like I was going to say, it's our obligation to what we passed, what the citizens by a vote over 60% asked us to do.
You could vote no on this amendment and still do that.
Yes.
I'm not
but the
suggesting, I'm not suggesting at all that we don't contribute what we said we would. I fully believe we should. I just think that this version 2 locks us into what we've been in what we've been in and what we're trying to get out of. And I don't agree with the language. I don't
doesn't
agree
lock-
with the way that it's presented. I don't agree with that it's us saying we're trying to underfund the budget. I really, really strongly disagree with the way that this is presented.
I don't know that it locks us in. It's a 1-year increase and reverts to CPI. But on a larger point, I think the only 2 things that I am sure of when it came to our referendum is that the citizens voted for a referendum to increase, in most cases, their taxes for increased response times, for improved response times. Anything above that or less than that, I don't believe is, I think is speculation. And I think that passing version 2 honors that referendum. And might be an olive branch to other municipalities to come to the table.
It doesn't give the other municipalities any additional incentive that they don't have right now.
It gives Oconomowoc Lake and the town incentive.
Why didn't they agree this year then?
What's that?
Why didn't they agree this year?
Nothing
nothing
that they
changes.
were, I think they were hoping the city would acquiesce and instead of funding at 1.5 would fund at, 1.7, 1.8. And I don't know that, I think there has been a lot of, like Alderman Eicher said, that's a lot to get done in 10 months. And I know that's laughable for a private business, but this is government.
In multiple municipalities, too. We're not talking just Delafield or 1 or 2 others. There are a lot of moving parts here, so I think, I know my constituents strongly supported the referendum, and I think the funding formula needs to be negotiated, and so they're 2 separate things in my mind. We just need to do this in order to move forward. That's how I'm seeing it.
I mean, a year from now, those that support this amendment could be wrong, and we could be faced with, intransigence from the other side. But then you will get, and I have every confidence that you will get the city of Delafield saying no to whatever proposed budget is out there, And year after year after year, it will revert to the previous year's budget. Funding will be stuck at $450, $450, $450. But I could be wrong.
I mean, the city could still do a 1 or 2% increase.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Can I get hands raised for this, please? Okay, so for the
I'm sorry.
ayes,
For,
Ayes?
the ayes,
Ayes.
and then the nays. Okay.
Motion fails. Would somebody like to make another motion, or can we move on?
So one more time on the nays. It was Iker, Wilken, Schaefer, and Henry.
You know, there isn't a need for us to do anything, and seeing the division in the council, you know, maybe the best path is to do nothing and put it in another community's hands to take the next stab at an amendment that works for everybody. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I can certainly, if we do nothing, I can certainly convey to the other administrators what the conversation was here tonight and encourage them to watch the conversation on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Could we take this discussion and some of these points and come up with a version 4 that maybe accommodates the concerns that we have here tonight?
Is that Tim's reduction of the fixed allocation over time? Is that what you're talking about?
can you communicate with the municipalities that that's something that's an option that we would,
They will say, we're not interested in changing the formula.
okay. Then I don't,
And 5 years is too long, because in the meantime, the budget's going up every year. We're not going to have a 5% increase in our,
I think positive input to give to forward would be that, from my chair, would be that we're interested in contributing the amount that we passed in the referendum, and that was with the intent and hope that we would get other communities to help get as close to that $4.769 million budget that was proposed as possible. And whatever mechanism gets us there is something for us to consider.
And as far as Lake Country Fire and Rescue, the budget that will be presented, I think the representatives to that board wouldn't be able to approve any budget that would exceed the 1.5. We can still contribute as much as we want.
Right.
There's nothing that prevents us.
No, we've gone
from
over that
contributing
twice.
that. Yes. So.
The beginning and at the end.
Yes.
But LCFR will have to go through the motion of passing like a $3 million. LCFR board will have to go through the motion of passing a $3 million budget.
To be compliant with the IMA.
Right.
Right. But they've shown in the past that their willingness to present multiple budgets.
And they both get approved.
They both get approved.
So
Well, that might change this year, but
So we want,
this is just.
so there's three pieces of the formula that are to be considered. One is CPI plus 2%, one is the fixed funding formula, and one is a shared fund allocated formula. The only thing on the table that we're being presented with is eliminating the cap. Nothing else, right? The other two are somehow taboo. I think they should both be in play, is really what I'm saying. And so that's where I'll leave it. And nothing in version 2 says either of those things are negotiable, and they need to be. And nothing's going to stop us from contributing the $1.54 million that we are taxing, because we want to have the best fire department we can afford.
Yeah, and just so folks know, if we're faithful to the IMA, which I hope we are, that Fidelity means laying off 7 firefighters for 2024.
That, not at 1.54.
No, at the 3 point,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, but so.
'Cause that would be, that would be Fidelity to the IMA.
Right.
7 firefighters were just hired. At least, yeah, or 6.
Okay. We will move on to 11D, approval of vouchers.
We just said we didn't want to spend any money. I'll move to
We-
approve the voucher list.
I'll second.
We already budgeted for all this. I'm sorry, who was the second? Danielle. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, passes. City Administrator, anything else?
No update tonight.
City Clerk, anything else?
No update.
Okay, City Treasurer, refer you to the packet for item number 1, May 2023 Treasurer's Report. Council request for future agenda items. If we have any today, let's hear them. Otherwise, bring them up over the next couple weeks. All right, hearing none, we will move on. For you to the correspondence, and we are adjourned, seeing no further business at 9:37 p.m. Thank you, everyone.